Did you know that in medieval Europe, the price of a loaf of bread, the wage of a craftsman, and even the value of money were not left to chance or market competition? Everything was carefully controlled by organizations known as guilds. These guilds were not just groups of workers, they were powerful institutions that dictated how the economy worked in towns and cities across Europe. Imagine being told exactly how much you could charge for your work, or even whether you were allowed to work at all. That was life in medieval times, and it gives us fascinating insight into how money, labor, and trade were managed long before modern banks, stock markets, or labor laws existed. Guilds were essentially professional associations for every trade imaginable. If you wanted to be a baker, a blacksmith, a carpenter, or a weaver, you had to be a member of the corresponding guild. Without their approval, you couldn't legally sell your products or offer your services. These guilds were far more than professional networks. They were political and economic powerhouses with the ability to shape the lives of everyone in their town. They determined who could enter a profession, who could earn a living, and how products should be made. Membership wasn't optional. Without it, survival in the medieval economy was almost impossible. One of the most fascinating aspects of guilds was how they controlled prices. Unlike today, where prices are generally set by supply, demand, and competition, medieval markets operated under strict guild regulations. Guilds created official price lists for almost everything, including bread, wine, clothing, tools, and even handcrafted weapons. If a craftsman dared to sell a product below the approved price, he could face serious consequences, such as heavy fines, public shaming, or even being expelled from the guild. Expulsion was more than just a penalty. It often meant starvation, as you would be legally barred from working in your trade. The guild system ensured small artisans survived, prevented monopolies by individual merchants, and maintained product quality, but it also artificially inflated prices and restricted competition. Wages were equally controlled. Guilds established strict wage rules for different levels of workers: apprentices, journeymen, and masters. Apprentices were usually young learners who received little more than food and lodging, while journeymen earned fixed daily wages. Masters, who owned the workshops or businesses, retained the majority of profits. Even if a master wanted to pay a worker more to attract talent or reward skill, guild rules forbade it. Wages were standardized to maintain fairness among workers, but this also ensured that masters maintained control over earnings and limited social mobility for workers. Creativity or ambition could only go so far under such a system. The apprenticeship system was another method guilds used to control the labor market. To become an apprentice, a young person often needed guild approval, multi-year contracts, and sometimes even a fee. Guilds would limit the number of apprentices allowed, creating artificial scarcity of skilled labor and preventing wages from dropping. This system guaranteed that guild masters had a steady supply of trained workers, and it effectively restricted competition within the trade. By controlling who could enter a profession and how many workers could be trained, guilds maintained economic dominance in their cities. Guilds also claimed to enforce quality standards. Bakers had to make bread of a certain weight, weavers had to produce cloth of specified dimensions and durability, and blacksmiths had to craft tools and weapons that met strict strength requirements. While this was advertised as a way to maintain quality, it also served to block innovation. New methods that could make production cheaper or faster were often discouraged or banned because they threatened the established system. Tradition became a tool for maintaining control, allowing guilds to limit competition while appearing to protect consumers. The influence of guilds extended to money itself. Goldsmith and merchant guilds monitored coins, checking their weight and purity, rejecting counterfeit coins, and even controlling lending practices. Coins rejected by guilds were essentially worthless, giving these organizations immense control over the flow of money. Guilds ensured trade within their cities operated smoothly, while also maintaining their own economic power. Their oversight meant that money, labor, and trade were all interconnected under guild regulation. Guilds were not only economic players, they were political ones as well. Kings and city councils often relied on guilds for tax collection, military supplies, and advice on legislation. In exchange, guilds received special privileges, such as monopolies, tax breaks, and legal protection. This created a symbiotic relationship in which guilds acted almost like miniature governments within towns, wielding authority over both the economy and politics. Their influence touched every aspect of daily life, from the price of bread to the rules governing trade. For ordinary people, guilds provided stability but limited freedom. Prices were predictable but often higher than they would have been in a competitive market. Jobs were secure, but career advancement was restricted by guild rules and apprenticeship limitations. Creative or ambitious craftsmen often found themselves constrained, as the guild system prioritized maintaining control over fostering innovation. Guilds were designed to protect existing members, ensuring their survival and profitability, but this came at the cost of broader economic freedom. As trade expanded and cities grew larger, the power of guilds began to decline. The Industrial Revolution and the rise of machinery broke the traditional guild monopoly. Factories did not adhere to guild regulations, and apprenticeships were no longer necessary in the same way. Free market competition gradually replaced guild control, but many of the principles of regulation, licensing, and wage standardization found their way into modern labor laws, unions, and professional organizations. The guild system laid the groundwork for many structures we now take for granted in modern economics. Despite their decline, guilds offer lessons that are still relevant today. They remind us that control over prices, wages, and money can shape societies profoundly. Too much control can stifle innovation, while too little can create instability and unfairness. Guilds were early examples of organized economic power, teaching us about balance, regulation, and the effects of concentrated control. In many ways, they were the original gatekeepers of economic activity, influencing how trade and labor were conducted for centuries. When we look at today's economy, the traces of guild-like control can still be seen. Modern licensing requirements, trade regulations, and even union rules echo the guild system, showing that history often repeats itself in different forms. The idea of controlling who can enter a profession, what they can charge, and how money circulates is far from obsolete. By understanding guilds, we gain insight into the origins of economic control and how power structures continue to shape our financial world. So, next time you think about rising prices, wage debates, or the rules governing your work, remember that these issues are not new. They existed in medieval Europe under guilds, and their influence continues to resonate today. Medieval guilds were masters of control over the economy, balancing stability with power and shaping the financial lives of entire communities for generations. They serve as a historical mirror, showing us how organized groups can manipulate economic systems to maintain influence, and reminding us to be aware of similar dynamics in our modern world. Understanding medieval guilds is not just about history, it's about learning how economic power, control, and regulation affect real people. Their story offers lessons in fairness, monopoly, and the importance of balance in markets, all of which remain relevant for anyone interested in finance, business, or economic history. By exploring their methods, we can better appreciate the systems we have today, the regulations we rely on, and the ongoing debate over how much control should exist in markets. History shows that whenever power over money, prices, and wages is concentrated in the hands of a few, it creates both opportunity and limitation. Medieval guilds wielded this power effectively, and while their era has passed, their legacy is still visible. From modern labor laws to trade organizations, the echoes of guilds remind us that control and regulation are double-edged swords. They can protect stability and fairness, but also restrict growth and innovation. The challenge remains to strike a balance between regulation and freedom in our own financial lives. In conclusion, the story of medieval guilds teaches us that money, wages, and prices are never neutral. They are instruments of power, and understanding who controls them and how is crucial. Guilds maintained their control over their trades, safeguarded profits for their members, and influenced entire communities. Their legacy provides insight into the historical roots of modern economic systems and reminds us that financial control has always been about survival and power.